There are 7.5 billion people in this world, driving over 1.5 billion vehicles. 363 million of those vehicles are commercial. These vehicles are transporting people, goods, and services that all do their part to keep the world in motion. From the most populous of places on Earth to the most remote places only accessible during the right conditions. It is not often that we realize how much everyone and everything is constantly in motion until it stops. When it stops, that is where we come in. To grab, pull, push, winch, hoist, jump, unstick, unlock, or just plain maneuver you out of the mess you found yourself in. Some would call us drivers, operators, first responders, or essential workers. But I like to think of us as heroes from the ditch.
In 1947, the U.S. Forest Service introduced us to Smokey Bear. An American black bear wearing a campaign hat became the poster cub for individual responsibility. His message was intended to prevent man-made calamity in the nation's forests. Tips on how to pick a proper campfire spot, how to maintain and extinguish a campfire, and where to properly dispose of charcoal after barbecuing are all common sense suggestions for preventing a raging inferno. The commonality among these simple tips is that the responsibility rests in the individual. The slogan was, "Only you can prevent forest fires." Well, today, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok are flooded with recollections of near misses and rants about absent-minded motorists. Even though every state has enacted law which mandates that motorists slow down or move over when they see flashing lights, who's complying? While necessary and required by statute, the reflective vest has become a brightly colored shield that some feel repels oncoming traffic. Worn with this attitude, it is more of a target than a defense. When in the path of an oncoming driver, neither the vest nor the law has power to protect the operator. What we do not see often enough is personal accountability by the towing and recovery operator, a trained and competent individual who is taking steps to keep him or herself safe while working at the roadside. Consider the spirit with which Smokey Bear delivered his message when I say, only you can prevent yourself from being struck on the roadside. I say this fully aware that lightning, an unstoppable force of nature, is the cause for some forest fires. In spite of our best efforts, tragic losses of towers still happen. Nonetheless, a towing operator must take accountability for his or her own actions. They themselves must make the choices about their behavior that will take them home safely at the end of every shift. I offer the following simple strategies to operators of carriers which can increase your safety on the roadside. Strategy 1 begins as soon as you arrive at the roadside destination. Consider that you've been dispatched to transport a disabled automobile from the side of a busy expressway. Upon arrival, you find the client's vehicle on the right-hand shoulder. After safely positioning your towing vehicle, consider the path you'll take to meet the client or reach the rear of the truck. Once you check the mirrors to ensure it's safe to exit the cab, the quickest and shortest route to the curbside is around the front of the tow truck. For most towing or transport vehicles, getting out of the zero buffer zone means taking 4 paces towards the front of the truck. The alternate but less safe route means a trek of 20 to 30 feet through no man's land, then 10 to 12 more feet through the crush zone that's between the towing vehicle and the casualty to get to the non-traffic side. Demonstrating to the client that it is safe to walk in the zero buffer zone could cause them to step out into traffic. After all, your choice served as an example. The safest path is the shortest route to the non-traffic side. The second strategy works best when the client is still inside their vehicle when you arrive. Approach the curbside window, introduce yourself to the client, then ask that they stay in the vehicle for a moment longer. Next, place wheel chocks on the vehicle's curbside tires to prevent it from rolling forward or backward. Return to the curbside window and give the client quick instructions about how to safely exit their vehicle. Your first responsibility is always your own safety, but the next most important charge is the client's safety. Instruct them to exit only once there is a gap in traffic, then come directly to your position on the non-traffic side. Prior to exiting, ask them to shift the vehicle's transmission into neutral and release the parking brake. The wheel chocks will prevent the casualty from rolling, and you've just eliminated one trip to the traffic side to prepare the vehicle for loading onto the carrier. Once the client is with you, escort them to the cab of your towing vehicle and ask them to remain inside until you join them for the ride to their destination. Since most breakdowns requiring a tow result in the casualty being parked on the outside shoulder, Strategy 3 asks you to consider storing every piece of rigging, securement devices, and safety equipment that you may need for loading exclusively on the passenger side of the carrier. I've spoken to many operators who admit that the tow lights for their wrecker are on the driver's side of the vehicle because that's where the charging connection was installed from the factory. That's not a reason for disregarding your own safety. That's an excuse for someone else's ignorance. Some operators say their sports car or exotic vehicle bridles are kept on the driver's side because they're seldom used, and the boss put them there. Is it considered more favorable to place yourself in harm's way 3 or 4 times a month to retrieve a less used item? I recognize that every square inch of space on our tow trucks and carriers is prime real estate. Please consider organizing and storing your equipment in a manner that keeps you, the most important asset in this scheme, safe on the highest percentage of calls. Also, ensure that the passenger side controls are fully functional and that you, the operator, become just as familiar with them as the driver's side controls. A carrier that responds to roadside transport calls should not be in service if the passenger side controls are inoperative. My obsessive-compulsive nature likes things neat and symmetrical, so this next tip may come as a surprise. When you finish your next job involving the winch on your carrier, consider stowing both legs of the winching bridle in a tie-down slot on the passenger side rear corner of the carrier deck. Light tension on the winch line will keep them secured. While this may not be pleasing to the eye in terms of symmetry, it will indeed provide an opportunity for you to stay out of the crush zone should you need to change out the bridle. Placing your body between the casualty and the rear of the towing vehicle is not always preventable. Nevertheless, if you can prevent one exposure to this dangerous area, shouldn't you? This strategy makes the next one possible, unless you're 7.5 feet tall. Dual-sided free spool handles and air release solenoids are optional items on most carriers. If you or the company opted for a stainless steel visor over these more useful upsells, you'll find that to release the winch, a trip to the zero buffer zone is required when the truck is parked on the right shoulder. Another trip back to engage the winch is also required once enough wire rope has been deployed. The alternative is to never need to unlock the winch for routine loading of the carrier. Here's where the fourth strategy comes in. Once you have perfected how to park the carrier Deploying the bed will place the edge of the deck right underneath the casualty's bumper. Then, 5 to 6 feet of wire rope is all that you must pull from the winch to reach the transport connections. With the winching bridle secured to the passenger side corner of the deck as mentioned in the previous tip, you can reach over the side of the bed and grasp the wire rope with one hand and operate the winch lever with the opposing hand. Proper positioning of the carrier means less wire rope to pull off of the winch drum. For a more thorough explanation, watch our video on this method at WreckMaster.com. This technique does require practice to perfect, so start now. Federal law requires a minimum of 4-point tie-down on any transported cargo. This includes automobiles. 2 of these are on the traffic side, so the 5th strategy must be taken with a grain of salt. I don't intend to advocate for willful breach of statute, but when complying with the law places me in the path of inattentive motorists, I'll take my chances as a criminal. Once the client's vehicle has been placed on the carrier deck, the first thing an operator should do is install a front tie-down on the non-traffic side. Secure the front of the casualty to prevent it from rolling backward in the event of a failure between the winch and the attachment to the vehicle. Here's the first opportunity to remain compliant with the law, but enter a game of virtual Frogger. Option 1 is to install the other front tie-down that's on the traffic side. Option 2 is wait until later. I'll wait. Next, lower the deck a little and slide it forward, leaving room to move the bed into the locks. Keep the bed angled up slightly since only one tie-down has been installed. Now, install a rear tie-down on the non-traffic side of the casualty. Then lower and slide the bed into the locks. Make sure you keep yourself out of the kill zone behind the cargo that's now resting on your carrier bed. The 8-point tie-down method is a terrific way to keep yourself to the sides of the vehicle when loading and unloading. Now that the front and rear tie-downs have been installed and tightened only on the curb side of the carrier, join your client in the cab of the tow vehicle and drive cautiously to the nearest safe haven. This could be a rest stop, a gas station, or an emergency pull-off area. Install the driver's side tie-downs, relax the winch, and head to the destination. If placing yourself on the traffic side of the vehicle to install a tie-down system is more dangerous than driving cautiously to the nearest safe haven away from this hazard, I'm in favor of erring ever so briefly to increase the chances of my own survival. I was never any good at Frogger anyway. I recognize that each towing call, no matter how routine, has its own unique features. These tips may not work in every scenario. However, if you can incorporate them into a disciplined approach to your job, they will eliminate almost every single reason for placing yourself on the traffic side of the carrier during a loading operation. The responsibility lies with you. The public doesn't seem to be giving us any more room to do our jobs. So, it's up to you to make the choices that are going to keep you safe. For more information on these topics, see WreckMaster's website and consider joining us at an in-person course. For WreckMaster, I'm Casey Burrows. See ya in the ditch.